You send the message. Simple enough. I can't make it tonight. Then your brain kicks in. But wait, they might think I'm blowing them off, or that I don't care. I should explain. Just quickly, just so they understand. So you type, and type, and type. Hey, sorry, I know this is last minute. I've just had a really full week, and I didn't sleep well, and I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, and I just don't think I have the energy tonight. I hope that's okay. I still really want to catch up soon, though. Maybe next week. You hit send. Then you stare at the screen, waiting for their reply, running through every possible interpretation of what they might be thinking. Sound familiar? Here's what I want you to sit with for a second. Most people who do this aren't bad communicators. They're actually really thoughtful communicators. They care deeply. They pay attention. They don't want to hurt anyone. So why does it feel like something is always going wrong? Here's what I think is actually happening. And this reframe changed everything for me. Over-explaining isn't a communication problem. It's a permission problem. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why your brain does this, what it's actually costing you, and the specific steps to stop without becoming cold, blunt, or someone you don't recognize. Before we get into the psychology, let's name the pattern clearly. Because over-explaining is sneaky. It doesn't always look dramatic. It looks like adding because after every decision you make, even when nobody asked. It looks like apologizing before making a request. Sorry, I know this is a lot to ask, but it looks like repeating yourself in 3 different ways to make sure they really get it. It looks like texting 3 follow-up messages after sending one perfectly clear message. It looks like justifying why you're tired, why you said no, why you feel the way you feel. It looks like rehearsing conversations in your head before they happen and replaying them after they're over. The common thread in all of it? You're not just communicating, you're building a case. And here's where it gets interesting. Most people assume over-explaining is about wanting clarity, about being a good communicator, about making sure everyone's on the same page. But that's not the full picture. Here's what's actually happening. The real reason is something called self-permission, and it's the core of everything we're going to cover today. Self-permission is the belief that your needs, your thoughts, your decisions, your feelings are valid on their own, without anyone else agreeing, without justification, without approval. High self-permission sounds like, I've decided not to go, that's my call. Low self-permission sounds like I'm not going, but let me explain why at length so that you're okay with it and don't think badly of me, and I can feel like I've earned the right to say no. The crucial difference? People with low self-permission aren't communicating. They're pleading their case. They don't actually believe their decision is valid until someone else validates it. So they explain, and explain, and explain, not to be understood, but to be allowed. Read that again. You're not explaining to be understood, you're explaining to be allowed. That one sentence might be the most important thing in this video. Sit with it. Now, where does this come from? Because nobody's born this way. This is learned. For a lot of people, over-explaining started in an environment where they had to earn the right to their own feelings. Maybe a parent who needed things explained and justified before they'd agree. Maybe a home where emotions weren't welcome unless they were perfectly packaged. Maybe a relationship where their needs were regularly minimized or questioned. When you're in an environment where your thoughts and feelings need to be acceptable before they're allowed, you learn very quickly to front-load your reasoning, to hedge everything, to soften every statement with, I know this might sound strange, but, or I don't want to make a big deal of this, but, and then those patterns follow you into friendships, into workplaces, into text messages at 10 p.m. when you just want to say, you can't come out. You're not broken. Your nervous system learned a strategy. It's just that the strategy has a cost. Let's also talk about fear of negative evaluation, because this is running in the background every time you over-explain. Psychologists describe this as the fear of being judged, criticized, or rejected by others, and it's deeply human. We're wired for social survival. Being excluded, criticized, or misunderstood still registers in the nervous system like a threat. So over-explaining becomes preemptive defense. You're trying to cover every angle before someone can find fault with you. The internal script goes, if I explain enough, they can't judge me. If I address every possible objection before they raise it, I'll be safe. But here's the part your brain doesn't tell you. More explanation doesn't reduce the chance of judgment. It often increases doubt. And then there's what CBT therapists call mind reading, the cognitive distortion where you assume you already know what someone else is thinking. You assume they're going to misunderstand. You assume they're going to judge. You assume that without an explanation, they'll fill in the gap with something negative. But the reality? Most of the time, the other person wasn't going to think that deeply about it. When you cancel on a friend and just say, can't make it tonight, they're probably just going to say no worries. They're thinking about their own life, not building a case against you. Your brain is running a threat simulation that most of the time doesn't match reality. Here's the painful irony. Over-explaining the thing you're doing to protect yourself is often doing the opposite of what you intend. When you over-explain, you sound less certain, not more. People don't think, wow, they really thought this through. They think, are they sure about this? Confidence reads as information. Uncertainty reads as doubt. And when you load a simple statement with 5 layers of justification, the person on the other end subconsciously wonders why you need to work that hard to convince them. There's also another backfire that catches people off guard. Giving reasons invites negotiation. Watch what happens. I can't come tonight because I'm tired. Oh, you'll feel better once you're there. Just come for an hour. The moment you gave them a reason, you gave them something to argue with. A simple, I can't make it, is much harder to debate. And then there's the cost that nobody talks about. The emotional exhaustion of constantly managing other people's reactions. When you're always preempting, always softening, always building a case, you're not just communicating, you're working. Every conversation becomes a performance, and eventually, you're running on empty. Let's go one level deeper, because this is where it all makes sense. Underneath over-explaining, there's usually a belief that sounds something like this. My needs aren't valid unless they're understood and approved. Or even deeper, if I am misunderstood, I'll be rejected. Not as a conscious thought, just as a background frequency. A hum your nervous system has been running for years, and because that belief is there, being direct feels genuinely dangerous. Not just uncomfortable. Dangerous. Like something bad will happen if you just say what you mean without the safety net of a full explanation. So your brain over-explains the way someone might overdress for a job interview at a company that's notoriously hard to impress, covering every base, leaving nothing to chance, hoping that sheer effort will earn you a pass. The problem is that in real relationships and real conversations, you shouldn't need a pass. You don't owe people a case file. You're allowed to have needs. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to change your mind. But until you actually believe that, the explaining will keep coming. Pay attention to this because it changes everything. The work isn't learning to communicate differently. The work is learning to believe you're allowed to. Let's make this concrete, because this is where it gets useful. Here's the before version. And if you've ever sent this kind of message, you're in good company. Hey, sorry, I know this is last minute and I feel terrible about it, but I've just had so much going on this week and I'm completely drained and I haven't been sleeping well and I just don't think I can make it tonight. I'm so sorry. I still really want to see you, and I hope you're not annoyed. Maybe we can sort something next week. Now here's the after. I can't make it tonight. Let's sort something next week. That's it. Full stop. Clean. Respectful. And crucially, honest. Because the first version wasn't more honest. It was just more anxious. Let's try another one. Work scenario. Before, hi, I just wanted to check if it would maybe be okay to take Friday off. I know it's not great timing, and I totally understand. If not, I've just been feeling a bit run down lately, and I think I need a rest. But obviously, if it's not possible, that's completely fine too. I just thought I'd ask after. I'm taking Friday off. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. That sounds aggressive. That sounds cold. And that reaction, that discomfort, that's exactly the thing we need to talk about. Here's the thing. Direct communication doesn't mean harsh communication. The goal isn't to become someone who bulldozes over everyone. The goal is to speak with the same respect for yourself that you already show to others. So here's how to start. Step 1. Catch the trigger. The moment you feel the urge to add because after a decision you've already made, stop. That urge is the signal. Not because is always wrong, but because when it comes from anxiety, it's not adding clarity. It's adding a defense you don't actually need. Other triggers to watch for. Apologizing before you've even made the request. Repeating the same point 3 different ways. Continuing to talk after your point has landed. When you notice the urge, pause. That pause is the practice. Step 2, remove the defense layer. Say the sentence without the justification. Not, I can't come because I'm exhausted and I've had a rough week and I know this is annoying. Just, I can't come. Not, I feel like maybe I don't want to do this. I don't know. It might just be me. Just, I don't want to do this. Stripped of the padding, it feels exposed. That exposure is normal. It's the feeling of trusting your first sentence, which is exactly what you've been not doing. Step 3. Use the pause rule. After you've said your piece, stop talking. This is harder than it sounds, because silence for over-explainers feels like a void that needs filling. But silence is just silence. The other person is just processing. You don't need to fill it with explanations. Sit in the pause. Let it be uncomfortable. That discomfort is your nervous system catching up to a new pattern. Step 4. Practice tolerating misunderstanding. This is the big one. Real growth here, not just technique, but genuine change, comes when you can let someone misunderstand you and not spiral into explanation to correct it. Not every misunderstanding needs fixing. Not every raised eyebrow needs addressing. Not every silence needs filling. When you can let a misunderstanding just sit there without catastrophizing, without launching into damage control, that's when you know the belief underneath is shifting. Step 5. Replace explanation with ownership. Notice the difference in these phrases. I feel like maybe I kind of want versus I want. I was thinking, I don't know if this is right, but maybe versus I've decided. Ownership language signals self-permission. It tells the other person, and more importantly, it tells you that this is a valid decision. Full stop. Some phrases you can start using this week. I'm not available for that. I've decided to pass. I want to do this. That doesn't work for me. I'm taking Friday off. No because. No sorry. No preemptive defense. Just a statement from someone who believes they're allowed to make it. Before we finish, I want to make one important distinction, because this isn't about becoming someone who never explains anything. Healthy explaining exists. It's intentional, it's brief, and it's additive. It clarifies when clarification is genuinely needed. It gives context when context is actually useful. The difference is where it comes from. Healthy explaining comes from, I want you to understand something specific. Over-explaining comes from, I need you to approve of me. If you can tell the difference internally, you're already ahead. The goal isn't to never explain. It's to only explain when you mean it, not when your anxiety is steering. And here's the bigger idea. Emotional maturity isn't being perfectly understood by everyone around you. It's being okay when you're not. When you can tolerate ambiguity, when you can let someone be uncertain about your motives and trust yourself anyway, you've done something genuinely hard. You've given yourself permission, and you've stopped outsourcing that permission to other people. So here's where we land. The goal isn't to communicate perfectly. The goal is to feel allowed to speak without needing approval first. You don't have to earn the right to your needs. You don't have to justify your decisions to people who didn't ask. You don't have to preemptively defend yourself against judgment that hasn't even happened. You are already allowed to say what you mean. The version of you that can do that, they're not cold. They're not careless. They're not rude. They're just someone who has stopped auditioning for permission. And the more you practice, the quieter that urge to explain gets. Not because you've suppressed it, but because the belief underneath has shifted. You're not explaining to be understood. You're not explaining to be allowed. You're just speaking. And that's more than enough.